forest-wide outcomes, we've already talked about the Black Canyon Trail. That's mostly in the southern area, but it's also supposed to be, it will be forest-wide also. Volunteerism, the Wilderness Coalition was invited but didn't come. They have a stewardship program, and then this overall coalition. Omero, in just 2 minutes, do you want to talk about volunteerism?
Sure. 2 minutes. So with volunteerism, at least for me, we have all these different proposals happening, and the people that you see here are pretty much the folks that are the recreation program. So how do we manage those two together? And I think for me a big way that we can make progress is with volunteerism. So we initially had a working relationship with CFT, Community Forest Trust. The grant funding expired, but we still want to make headway with volunteerism. So what we've managed to do is through our reorganization, we added Adrian's position. So Adrian Reagan is our Forest Partnership and Volunteer Coordinator, and we've been developing a framework for volunteerism. So as she transitions into the position, I think by end of the year, and certainly into next year, our volunteer program will be up and running pretty well again. And part of that is Adopt a Trail program, and yeah, so. And I guess what I also envision is maybe we get to a point where it's not just Forest Service volunteers or City of Prescott volunteers, but that we all have this shared volunteer resource that we can go to each other to help out with different projects, different maintenance needs. Thank you.
So we won't talk about this. If you don't come, you can't talk about your program. But it exists, and if anybody feels the need to say anything about it. Volunteers doing wilderness work. Okay, Omero.
2 minutes? 1 minute. So Jason Williams, who's our wilderness and trails coordinator, he used to work with Arizona Wilderness Coalition, and so he has this had this idea to develop a stewardship program. And so the Prescott worked with Arizona Wilderness Coalition and developed wilderness stewards, and part of it connects to so last week, I don't know if you know, last week was the 50th anniversary of the Wilderness Act, signed in 1964 by President Johnson. And related to that, the chief had this 10-year wilderness stewardship challenge. So for the 50th anniversary, we want to have all of our wilderness areas maintained to this standard. And one of the challenges to that was providing monitoring of our wilderness areas and really what's out there and how good of a job are we doing to maintain these areas. So that's the connection with the Wilderness Coalition. Was the wilderness stewards helped us meet our challenge.
Okay, and I'll just make a comment about pulling it all together. People thought, let's form one big coalition, and that includes everybody, one big tent. And so we had some meetings. It was a way to transition that coordinating team into something bigger. And so we got that first brochure out. But then there was so much activity in these on-the-ground teams and in the zone level forums that everybody was too busy. So we haven't really done much with this. Maybe or maybe not there's a value. If it existed, it would be Central Arizona, Yavapai County, same areas, maybe a fourth area, Wickenburg. These are all the organizations that were involved and have been involved in that kind of coordinating leadership role. And so that's, for tomorrow, that's part of what we could talk about. Is there a reason to stay connected beyond these sub-areas? We have a few lessons. I'm just going to read off really fast, just because we have to get on our break and then do our wrap-up. The agency commitment has been critical. Early and ongoing collaboration, right from the get-go, we started involving partners and communities. Diverse participation, although it's been pointed out that there is more diversity than has been engaged, like true diversity, Latino, Pi Apache, low income, youth. We've had 2 youth engagement efforts. There's one on the west side too, but that didn't continue. The idea of you need action. Everybody knows this. You have to be showing some results to keep people motivated to continue. We've talked about numerous instances through the day. The co-sponsorship and shared leadership, you've heard repeatedly, is really key to the success of all of this, and the strong relationships. We've got the lessons on getting started, like start where you are, and I would say the idea that every place can have its own flavor, its own way of doing it, its own naming. It doesn't have to, that we can see how it all fits together, but we don't want to force it all into one mold. Engaging the other agencies, including forest employees, more, and that's something we could talk more about tomorrow. Thinking about recreation in a broader sense. The role of the forest as a sponsor and catalyzer, but not the whole sole leader. And as all these budgets are dwindling, it has to be, working with partners and sharing and aligning and collective action. Integration with program board and budgeting. These are topics that have been kind of on the, we've been talking about. The role of partners as co-sponsors and shared leadership. A role of independent facilitator as a long-term partner and sharing the workload. Then we've got this maintaining draw upon interest of the group, that you can't force an agenda. It's, like in this case, the Prescott side, trails is what people are interested in, so work on trails and lead to something else. The celebrating success, patience, perseverance, as has been also mentioned. It's taken a while, but there's really fruits of the effort are starting to come about. Long-term complex process is difficult for the public to quickly understand and see how it all fits together for everybody, including Forest Service. Everybody's struggles with this. So how we message is really key.